Another milestone in my early career, which was more remarkable than the first milestone, was when I spent a week in New York on my own. Sam and I planned our business trip around Mark's wedding. My son Mark was marrying his college sweetheart, Joan, and she was from New Jersey, where the wedding would be. Well, I got to stay in New York on my own. Sam went back to take care of his business, and I had time in New York on my own. I could see theater, I could do the museums, but I had a very good friend from my school days, high school and college. Her name was Florence Schwartz. She became Florence Stanley, and a very fine theater and television actress. Neil Simon was crazy about her and used her whenever he could, and so was Mike Nichols. She had a very important featured role in Neil Simon's Prisoner of Second Avenue. The starring role was taken by Peter Falk, but later they needed a replacement and Art Carney took over. Florence told me that they were going to move to Los Angeles for a limited run and then play a long time in Chicago. And she suggested to Mike Nichols that if they needed an understudy in Chicago, so they wouldn't have to pay per diem, there was a Chicago actress that she would recommend for an audition. Well, it just so happened, a stroke of luck, Neil Simon and Mike Nichols came in one day during the time I was in New York to rehearse or audition replacements. Art Carney was already set, but I guess they were looking for one person. They were looking for one person to play Art Carney's sister, who had been played by the woman who made the commercial that was famous, "You can't fool Mother Nature." Well, she wouldn't give up her contract in New York for the commercial because it paid so much, so they needed a replacement for her. Florence was able to contact Mike Nichols at the exact same time that he was going to be in New York. So he said, yes, have your friend come during a break in the rehearsal and I'll see her. Well, Florence came over to my hotel one night after the show with her script to give me pointers on how they would want the part interpreted. I also went to see her in the show that night. It was sold out. I had standing room only, but it was a delightful show, a wonderful comedy. And there were three sisters who added all the comic relief, you might say, but they were really the heart of the comedy in the show. And I arrived at the theater, and just like in the movies, there was this elderly gentleman sitting on a stool at the back door, the stage door monitor. And I told him I was there to see Mr. Nichols, and he said, I'll tell him you're here. And Mr. Nichols appeared, just like I remembered him from the pictures of the early playwrights company, Compass Players. He had a navy blue blazer with brass buttons, blonde hair, blonde eyebrows, which we know was always false because he lost all his hair when he was a very young man. And graciously said, you're the Chicago actress? And yes. He said, well, come on in on the stage and I'll have the stage manager read you the cues and you can give me the lines for the sister, Pauline. It was an awesome feeling just going on the stage of a New York theater with the work lights on, and the stage manager was reading me the cues, and after about 5 or 6 lines, he said, thank you very much, Miss Alexander. Uh-oh, this is the kiss-off. He's heard enough. Well, I had this wonderful experience. He rose out in the theater, which I could hardly see, and I got up to go, and he said, I think you'll make a very good Pauline, Miss Alexander. I'm thinking of the understudy role, of course. And I looked, I said, Mr. Nichols, do you mean that? He laughed. He said, go over and get a contract. When I got there, I found out the contract was for the role of Pauline, not the understudy. Well, I couldn't believe it. I'm in New York. This is my town. I'm a star. I walked on air till I got back to the hotel. And Mr. Nichols told me that they were going to start in the fall at the Amundsen Theater in Los Angeles, a 2,000-seat theater. And they would be there for 4 to 6 weeks and then come to Chicago. Well, I thought, I'd have to be out of town all those weeks. Now, my children would be okay, but how about Sam? Sam still wasn't sure that you should let your wife be out alone at night. So I got back to the hotel room, and I sat on the bed looking at the clock until it should reach 6 for when the rates should change for long distance. Can you believe it? I was going to make more money than I ever made in my life. And I'm waiting for the rates to change to call my husband. So I got him on the phone, and I said, honey, wonderful news. I was cast in a New York show. And told him a little bit about Florence arranging it. And I said, and then in September, we're going to go to Los Angeles for 4 weeks. He said, what? You'd go without me? I thought fast. Sam, if you had to go to Europe on business, you were going to import styles. You'd go, no thought about it. He said, I'd take you with me. I said, well, I don't think you can come with me. You've got the store to manage, but think of it this way. Parents have to give their children to the army. We're going Vietnam War days. And they don't complain. Kids go to camp, and the parents don't complain. Pretend I'm going to camp for 4 weeks. Well, I sold him on the idea because he couldn't say no. He knew what this meant to me. He visited almost every weekend in Los Angeles. And I prepared myself for this glorious new break in my career. As September approached, I get a call from New York giving me the date when they were going to rehearse for a couple of days in New York first. And it was Erev Yom Kippur. And I said, didn't even plan it, I said, oh, I can't come then, it's Yom Kippur. They said, what? They never heard of such a thing. And I said, I'll come the next day. I don't know where I got the nerve, the chutzpah, to behave like this. Okay. It was too late for them to find somebody else. And they didn't know if they could. Mr. Nichols wasn't there. So I arrived the next day. The 2 other actresses in Chicago were very wary of this Chicago actor. Like, you know, how good could she be? And the fact that I was coming a day late, and they allowed me. I was already under suspicion, carefully watched. But we got through the couple of days and moved to Los Angeles. We were put up in kind of a seedy motel on Hollywood Boulevard, which was seedy then also. The stars stayed in a very posh hotel, but that's the way it is. No complaints. My 2 co-actors did not drive. A lot of people in Chicago, in New York, don't drive, especially women. And I was the designated driver because you had to go through the freeways to get to the theater from where we were staying. Well, freeways were a new thing to me, too, and the Los Angeles drivers, but would I say no? So they gave me the keys to a rented car, and my co-actors had to be nice to me because I was the driver. They had to depend upon me. One night, coming home from the theater, we decided to go out for ice cream. We 3 are walking abreast. Now, I have to tell you that one of the sisters very talented woman. Her name was Ruth Jerislow. She was the woman who said in Harry Meets Sally, "I'll have what she's having." She did a lot of theater and commercials in New York. She had a long, good career. She's a heavy woman. And she was walking in the middle, and as we were coming down the boulevard, there were 4 or 5 youths approaching us, and one grabbed her purse. Ruth, being who she is, she held it close to her bosom. She wouldn't give it up. They gave up, and they ran away. We were totally unnerved. We were really shook up. We had a little ways to go before we found the car. And when I got in the car, I was so befuddled. I was making wrong turns, and a police car starts. Pull up, and the policeman comes in. "Let me see your license. Where were you going?" And I said, "Oh, officer, we were approached by a gang of boys, and he tried to get my friend's purse, and we were hoping that they would run away, and we finally got to our car fast, and I just didn't know what I was doing." "Oh, can I help you? Where are you going? I'll escort you." Pays to be an actor. But that was true. It was really true. Sam visited occasionally during those weeks, and he got a ticket for jaywalking. On Hollywood Boulevard, there were transvestites, pimps, hoodlums, dope addicts, all walking the street. Sam from Zion, Illinois, steps off the curb and gets a ticket. We thought that was so funny. And then we came back to Chicago and played at the Blackstone Theater for 4 months. Well, that was glorious for me. My friends could come and see the show. It was a wonderful show. Everybody was getting along fine, and we enjoyed it. The man who played the other male lead was Jack Somack, who became famous for a commercial he made, some of the old timers will remember it, about one spicy meatball. It was made for an antacid drink. Everybody was very charming. I got a parking place in a garage downtown by the month, and when Passover came, I decided to give a Seder. Now, I'd always given Seders. I was the Seder maker in the family because our home was kosher, and my siblings and in-laws knew that I would rather be in my home. So I had Seders, 18 to 20 people, because fortunately our family was growing. My brothers were married and had 3 and 4 children, and Sam's niece would come occasionally, and with grandchildren we were a group. Well, this Passover I couldn't make a big Seder because we were playing that evening, but I invited the cast. We were all Jewish except Art Carney. The young woman, his second wife, was Jewish. So they agreed to come to our house. We started, it was the second night, so we started very early so we could have our Seder and get back to the theater for the half-hour call. They all knew how to participate in a Seder. They'd all been raised in observant homes, except Art. But he was very quiet anyway. He was a very quiet man. Art Carney was trying to stay on the wagon and was filled with anxieties and nerves, and he didn't make much contact with people. But as soon as he got under those lights, he came alive and was a wonderful actor. Well, the engagement ended, and I had my own dressing room. I mean, this was first class. I was ready for it to be over, because there comes a time when you're working at a project, when it's over, and turn your attention to something else. But I thought, well, this is going to be so interesting. Now I'm a star. Richard Christensen, our dear erstwhile critic at the Tribune, was always very favorable to my work. I have some lovely notes and cards from Richard. When he heard about my engagement in New York to be in the show and to come to Blackstone, he did an article on me in the Tribune. Well, I was invited to someone's home who knew him, who was entertaining him that night, and they asked me to come and meet with him and give him some information, which I did, and the article appeared. Now you have to know the Times. The caption was, Highland Park housewife, Nabs Park, role. Highland Park housewife. You couldn't get over the anti-feminism in those days. But I accepted with good humor. Would I correct Richard Christensen? We became good friends after that. Well, again, I thought, the telephone's going to ring, I'm going to get engagements. No, sir, you have to go through the whole process over and over again, finding a theater who will accept you for an audition. But I kept on plugging away.